The following is a production of Texas Lutheran University. For more information, please visit tlu.edu.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, because I think Lincoln's one of my leadership heroes, but they were all sold out of Lincoln masks, so I got the antithesis of a Lincoln mask. But there is one quote Homer did that is worth, if I can read through this thing. This was his advice to Mr. Burns. To be loved, you need to be nice to others every day. To be hated, you don't have to do squat.
Ooh, that's hot. Thanks for the opportunity to come visit on my favorite university campus. This is going to be a discussion session, and that means I've got some prepared comments, but I prefer not to go through those line by line. Much prefer to find out what you guys are interested in, and so we'll do some back and forth. Now, key topics I want to cover are leadership, ethics, and your success, and winning. Your success, I want to emphasize that. We'll get back and touch on all of those, and they're all pretty doggone interrelated, and you'll see that, or you know that. The takeaways, I hope that I give you some pearls, some specifics on things that you can use for your success the day you leave this campus and start looking for a job or find a new job that you can use as you might start your job, thinking about leadership, thinking about ethics in the process. So your takeaway is some ideas on your success. My takeaway is to find out what you guys are all interested in, and how our future leaders really thinking process, and what interests you. So the rules of engagement are, I get to ask first questions. Now, fortunately, I've done most of the first questions I was going to ask by going around the room and asking where y'all from, and that guy I haven't met. What's your name?
Malcolm Dodson.
Malcolm, where are you from?
Lamar, Texas.
Lamar, okay, great. Now, did somebody else come in that I missed? Where are you from?
Houston.
Houston, and your name?
Gary Cooper.
Gary Cooper?
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh. Can I get your autograph after class? Anyway, I'm gonna, in asking those questions, I've gone around the class. There's a clear winner, Daniel, as to who's the furthest from home. Let me ask another question of all. What is it that you like most about your experience at Texas Lutheran? Give me some feedback. Yes, sir. Oh, you just itching back there?
All the people I met are great. I mean, I have a really close circle of, friends, and Greek life here is fun. The professors are awesome. You actually do get to know your professors as much as they get to know you.
I'm glad you said what I told you to.
But, I mean,
She briefed you real good. Huh? Good.
you do get what you pay for at going to a private university, I feel.
Uh-huh.
Like, there's a lot of little things that you get while you're here, and I see alumni get from your experience here. So, your education, feel smarter. So,
It's a lot of good things.
yeah.
Anybody else got something? What do you particularly? Come on, guys, gals. What do you particularly particularly like about Texas Lutheran University?
I guess something like we were saying, just the small classes, and it just kind of holds you accountable for all your things, because you can't just show up to class every day and try to just breeze by it. And kind of, you are held accountable to do your work.
Good. I want to talk about showing up, as you see on the board there. Anything else? What could Texas Lutheran University do better to make your experience here more fulfilling? Come on, that's an important question.
I think the main thing we lack is tradition. I think that a lot of universities around Texas have long-standing traditions, and when you come here, we do have some, but I don't think they're to the magnitude or to the liking of many students.
Tradition. What else could Texas Lutheran do better to make your experience here more fulfilling? Oh, come on, you're not all that enamored. It is a great university. It really is one of my favorite. I didn't go here, but I was asked 12 or 13 years ago to visit with a business class, and I was so impressed with the students and their interaction that when they asked me to be on the board here, it was no-brainer. I said sure. So it's got a lot going for it, but every organization needs feedback from its constituents, its customers, to improve. So, got any other thoughts you don't want to give to the whole class?
I mean, from what Alex said about holding yourself, or they hold you accountable for like the things you're supposed to be doing in your actions, I think it gets a little like overboard sometimes. Like if you miss a class, it's like it's the end of the world. Like no matter what, like you don't feel like a college student in the aspect of I'm responsible for getting myself to class. It's because when you get to class, you're going to be presented like you would if you were still in high school, as in like where's your note, like, or something in that aspect, or doing an activity around campus. Like you don't want to be afraid to have to go talk to the principal because something is gonna just make somebody upset, because it's so like close and you're held accountable for everything. You almost don't get the freedom that you're supposed to in college in some departments.
I see some head shaking. So maybe that's something that the student body and the administration needs to work on. So I understand. It's treating you like adults, like our near adults, or young potential leaders. There needs to be. Sometimes you don't feel like you're treated like that.
Yeah, I mean, I work for Campus Rec, and Debbie Roberts, when I gave her an interview, I asked her about her leadership tactics, and she said, I give my workers enough rope to hang themselves with, but not quite. So she contradicted herself, but she was just saying, like, in that department, she is pretty, not necessarily just lenient, but she lets you use your own creativity to make it better. She's not just ready to tell you how to do it because she doesn't want you to mess it up.
Okay. Did I?
Yes.
Please.
I think the steps that we've been taking, like opening up the masters for accounting, I think we need to continue on that path, hopefully pursue it and get more masters. I'd like to see a little bit more choice in the business administration degree. Like right now, I'm double majoring in marketing and management, but my minor is public relations. But if we had a public relations major, I would drop management in a heartbeat and pick up public relations as my major. So more choice, I guess.
And I understand that. The conflict there is the more choice you have, you want to be very good at what you do. And what you teach. And you've got to, you do so much with the resources you got and the size of your institution. But we are offering a master's degree now
Starting in the
in
fall.
accounting.
In the fall.
So, we should have done that some time ago, y'all. Most of the accountants had to go 5 years anyway, didn't they?
Yes, I did.
And most of the accountants, though, passed their CPAs the first time out. So, good program. You ought to get credit for it. That's great. Thanks for those ideas, and if you have any other ideas, this excellent professor that you have, I'm sure will be glad to get those ideas from you. There are some things I want to be sure we cover. So, any other questions you have about me at this point? I understand it was suggested to some of you maybe that you look on the internet or something about my background. And that didn't raise any questions?
I had a question, how can you serve on so many boards at one time?
You have a good staff. That's the only way you can do it. You have people that, and you're willing to spend a lot of time and effort in it. Now, to begin with, I served on a lot of community boards while I was CEO of Diamond Shamrock. And the only way I could do that was to have an executive assistant that scheduled me well and made sure I was prepared for every single meeting I went to. On outside corporate boards, while I was CEO, I was on 2 outside corporate boards, and I tried to limit it to 2 until the last year I was working. I knew I needed something to keep me busy in retirement, so I went ahead and accepted 2 other boards just about the time I retired. And in today's environment, to be on 4 corporate boards is probably too many boards. 20, 30 years ago, being on a board was a whole lot easier, and you felt less responsibility, you felt less liability for being on that board, or you could feel less responsibility and liability. And sometimes it was a CEO of a company bringing aboard some talent, but it was people that CEO, he or she knew, and it was unfortunately too much of a good old boys club. And that's why some companies like Enron got into problems because the directors really didn't understand their full responsibilities in making sure that they were overseeing the governance of the company. In today's environment, I would say, even in retirement, I wouldn't suggest anybody be over on more than 3 corporate boards. Yes, sir.
And I guess another thing I was wondering is, being so actively involved in all having your hands in lots of organizations, has there ever been a time where you have looked over or kind of been focused on one thing and pushed something else aside, either like a person or another task, because you were so actively involved in this one aspect and you kind of left off these other things? Has there been a time that's happened, and how did you kind of overcome that and make sure that you kind of got yourself back on the right track of being focused on everything?
Let me answer that in a general way. If I had to look back at my career, I did not spend enough time with my children and my wife.
Right.
And they, although I thought at the time I was spending lots of time with them, but when I look back at it, just taking the quality time with the family, I cheated them, I cheated myself. So please keep that in mind as you go about deciding what you want to do from a success standpoint. And you can manage it. You can manage it, but it takes real effort to manage it because you got all these demands on you. You got a business, you got the community, you've got employees.
Do you feel like you'd be as successful organizational wise today as you, if you would have taken the time with your family like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I did involve the family a lot, but I involved them in things that in retrospect, maybe they didn't want to be involved in. For example, you can go to, in San Antonio, you can go to fundraising gala several times a week if you accept all the invitations to do that. And you got a wife that's raising some kids at home, and you'd like for her to go to those galas with you. Well, that's a real imposition on the wife to go to more than one a month. And my wife used to talk about that, about CS and a corporate, you know what. It was too much of it. You know, besides going to the galas, we were going to company functions, company picnics, and she'd accompany me on some travel and so on. So would I be just, if I had reordered some of that? Absolutely, I think so. You know, the thing that was, you asked me how I did it all. One is I had an extremely good team of people. And in Diamond Shamrock, we did our very best to really empower everybody. Gave them responsibility, gave them accountability, made them feel like they were, not made them feel like, but provided the environment so they felt that they were really members of the team, and they were really contributing to the success of the company, which they really were. And because everybody was involved, it made my life a whole lot easier. I spent a lot of time with people, not just in the office in San Antonio, but I worked shifts out in convenience stores just to be sure I knew what was required of those people. I spent time in the refineries on safety inspections. So, you know, a lot of going. Was there a question back there?
No, sir, I was scratching.
You guys gotta watch scratching your head around here. I'm gonna jump on you.
You said empowering people gave you the ability to work better as a team now. Did that ever give you trouble, and how did you manage or control that? Empowering someone too much or too little to do a job for you, to work.
Did I empower them?
Right.
And did that give me troubles? No, because what involved the team in honing in on the vision of the company, what it was we wanted to do, and we took as many as 50 of the top people in periodic management meetings, and we talk about issues that the company had. So we'd involve them all. Everybody ended up, pretty much everybody's the best I know, ended up being on the team. And we did empower people. Now, did people misuse that power we were giving them? Yeah, maybe somewhat, but generally not. I mean, it was a rare occasion that you found somebody going off doing something that they shouldn't be doing. And if that did happen, you counseled them privately as quickly as you knew something was going haywire there that you needed to approach differently. Leading an organization, as far as I'm concerned, requires really knowing what's going on in the organization, really know what's going on in the business. Leadership, there are some genes that make up leadership, but there's a lot of other things. A lot of hard work, a lot of people, management development skills that one must master. And in business, a good leader really must know the business. People can come in, professional managers can come in and move from one industry to another. But if they're really going to be successful at it, they've got to get into the nuts and bolts of the business. Not take away the responsibility from the team members, but know what's going on and be able to help steer the organization. Got to have a vision. Check on is the organization moving towards that vision. Communicate to the organization. Get the organization to communicate back to you. Communications is key. Communications is more listening than it is talking. And I'm doing a lot more talking than I'm doing listening right now. Yes, please.
When you were CEO, could you actually walk us through what a day might look like for you, like what your tasks were from when you came in till you went home?
I'd get up early and I'd go out and work out first, beat the traffic, going to work, and be in the office. If we started at 8 o'clock, I'd be in the office 15 minutes early, and so that I could kind of clear my desk and notes that maybe had come in over the evening. My executive assistant was generally in at that point in time, so between she and I, we'd be sure that I understood what my schedule was for the day. And then it was a series of typical day in San Antonio. Was had a meeting scheduled that I'd usually schedule a meeting at 8:15 or 8:30. Be sure it gave people a chance to, in case the traffic was bad, so that we had everybody there for the staff meeting. The staff would meet, senior staff would meet once a week, so we'd have a session and where we talk about everything that was critical in the company, and it was mostly staff reporting in what were the issues that had to be addressed. And then some walking around. As typical, I'd have a lunch with a group of employees, not every day, but at least once a week. We'd have a random group of people invited in for a sit-down lunch. It was a small group, usually about 10 people, and we'd talk about, I'd get to know some of the people through that process, and then what's bothering them. What do they have any thoughts about the business? And how are things going in their end of the business? Spend time with customers. We always, strategy was always an issue, and we started, Diamond Shamrock started off with it was spun out from a larger company. It was also called Diamond Shamrock back in '87. And in the spinning out process, we had a lot of debt, had a tough balance sheet, so we really had to pay attention to the details of the business. Almost as long as I was in there, we were always looking at somebody to acquire to help us grow the company. We bought the Stop and Go stores early on. We acquired some of our jobber operations, brought them in to be company stores. We combined the U.S. refining operation of Total in the company. Had meetings on capital, not just spending money to buy things, but on capital improvements at all the refineries and signage at the convenience stores and building new convenience stores. I was on the road probably on average 2 days a week, 2 days every week, and that was maybe going out and inspecting convenience stores, trying to make a round twice a year to every one of the convenience store areas. We wouldn't hit necessarily all the stores, but at least the representative stores in an area like Denver, and so it was time in the air, and then there was industry associations and spending time with the National Petroleum Refiners Association, which was addressing regulations, environmental regulations, and safety items for the entire industry. So, I don't know if I answered your question. It was a busy time, but it was fun. And try to make sure everybody approached this as fun, at least some fun. But we had recreational facilities for the people at headquarters. We did have picnics, family picnics. We'd try to include the spouses in activities. Other questions?
Can you walk us through how your career progressed from Exxon to just like the steps you've taken, and were there any kind of major things that you did to get promoted? Any kind of like obvious tasks, or was it like more of a general your work ethic that got you where you are today?
Exxon was a great place to start because they had been training people for years, and it was like getting a graduate degree, but really working long hours. So it was from there. I always when I first went to work for Exxon, I just shortly thereafter I decided if I ever could become manager of the refinery I went to work for, that was my career objective. And so that's what I kept trying to work for. And I realized that to do so I needed experience here in the mechanical side, here in the operating side, here in the economic side, personnel side, and I had a stint of at least a year's duration in all of those things. While I was there, we put the refinery on a computer for the first time. So we started pricing product with computer calculations rather than just by hand. I really enjoyed the time I spent in human resources, negotiating with the unions, and managing some of the compensation issues of the company. Went from, and then they moved me along into the job, got into the transportation side of the business, and I got to level that was equal to or better than most of the refinery jobs, and I wanted to be a refinery manager. So when a buddy of mine who had left Exxon earlier said, "You want to join me and run this refinery up in Chicago?" I said, "Sure." So I left Exxon, and one of the reasons I left Exxon was I wanted to see if I could do something on my own, so to speak. Exxon has so much talent around it. Now that's a good thing if you can get a job with a company like that and get their training. But at some point you kind of want to say, could I do that on my own? Well, I found out I could do that on my own. But I got fired from that job because it was a refinery that was owned by a group of farmers, farmer co-ops, and they wanted to run that refinery. They weren't clear. They didn't have a vision, but they were giving us signals to run that, to give tours to their members through the refinery, not to make money with that refinery, not to do the things that spend the additional money on the safety and the operations of the equipment. And they and I fell out of bed with each other. I got fired, ended up back in, from Chicago, back in Houston at the time, wondering what I was gonna do. And ended up doing a little consulting for a natural gas company and got to set up some subsidiaries on an international basis for that company that wanted to get into energy other than their natural gas. Then had a bunch of good jobs for that company, and then a headhunter got hold of me and said, "You want to go to work for Diamond Shamrock?" And I had, the night before, I had read an article about all the money Diamond Shamrock was spending and all the money they were spending on the North Slope and buying coal mines and building chemical plants and so on. And so I was, I mean, it was like it had all been set up when that Hydrick and Struggles guy called me up and says, "Come interview Diamond Shamrock." And I just, the night before, read an article on him. So I said, God must be telling me something, I better go talk to him. And I was able to, and this is a point, I was able to enter that company at a fairly high level in a fairly non-threatening job to my peers. It was manager, or it was vice president and director of strategic planning. So that didn't bug my peer on this side that was running the refining business, or the peer on the other side that was doing the chemical business and so on. But we got to respect each other, and I got some other responsibilities. And then when we reorganized, I ended up on the board of the prior Diamond Shamrock, and got to become CEO chairman of this, what was that, to begin with, just refining and marketing and pipeline, but we then expanded it a bit.
So so you feel like that phone call from that headhunter was kind of the turning point? Or what do you think would have happened if you wouldn't have got that phone call?
Oh, I was thinking about going looking. I was at probably as I had achieved about all I could with that pipeline company, and so I would have been looking. I was right for that phone call. But no, the real turning point was being fired. And also the turning point before that was wanting to prove or know I could do something on my own, and without having an almost unlimited source of resources around. Let me talk a little bit about ethics. Oh, by the way, I am Lutheran. Any other Lutherans in this group? And you know, you might be a Lutheran if you actually think the pastor's jokes are funny and you smile as loud as you can. You might be a Lutheran if your room is a mess because you're saved by grace, not by works. You might be a Lutheran if you think the communion wafers are too spicy. You might be a Lutheran if you're at an evangelistic rally and you actually manage to raise your hands up to your waist. You might be a Lutheran if you sing stand up for Jesus while you're sitting down. Let me just point out a couple things on leadership. Alicia, I have some material I'm not putting my finger on right now, from an organization up in Minneapolis that one of my boards used once on selecting, to help them select their CEO. And they've been in business for 30 years. They came up, the last 30 weeks, they've come up with one-page email once a week covering some pearls of leadership. And I've asked them to please give me a copy of the whole thing, and if you care, I'll share it with you.
Yes.
Because it's good. The leader you are today is not the leader that you will be tomorrow if you worked at it. And just a few of those topics. The leader needs to discern the times for courage and for conviction. Discern the time when you say, it's my call, everybody get in line. You hope you don't have to do that very often. Collaboration wins. Teamwork wins. Know your talent. Stretch the organization beyond the predictable. The art of coaching. Own your own mistakes, and so on. Good stuff. One of the best things is the last one that they put down, and that's be reflective. Learn from your experiences and learn from your mistakes. Take time to reflect back on those experiences and learn from them. Anyway, good thing. A good friend of mine and I, some years ago, outlined a book. We were going to write he worked for me. He was a decorated Vietnam vet who ended up being my assistant at one point, and then head of our training. And he wrote, I was talking to him last week, wrote me an email, and I said, what you doing, Pat? Have you written our book yet? We outlined, I think, a good book, but we just couldn't get the catch to, there's a sea of leadership books out there, and we want something special. A lot of good stuff in our outline, a lot of commonality with those things that MDA, this list I just read to you. But someday we may write that book. But let me read this to you. This is what Pat wrote to me just last week in an email, and I'm going to give you a copy of that. Leadership. Maybe it's just integrity and managing from the heart. Caring about people. Treating all as the important, valuable persons they are. Doing your best to be consistent and guiding their efforts. Being humble at times, fearless at times, decisive when needed, and listening every chance you get. Smiling and acting positive no matter what the situation fits in there somewhere. Ask me tomorrow, and I will probably write something different. But it always comes back to people, integrity, and realization that you won't get out of this world alive and act that way. And when you really think you have become a great leader, check with a family member and get their opinion. My wife she can humble me in an instant. Always remembering that glory is fleeting. And by the way, that's good that my wife humbles me. I appreciate that. But I've got some copies of this. If you that comment from Pat, I'm gonna put them up here, and if you care to, I think there's a lot of wisdom there. Ethics. How is ethics taught at Texas Lutheran? Do you have to take a course in ethics?
Yes, sir.
Is that all you get in ethics?
I believe it's integrated.
Yeah.
Some of the other classes.
Good. It's got to be integrated in a number of your classes. It's got to be on the top of your mind. I mean, we can talk about what comes to mind. I'm doing too much talking, guys. But you know what good ethics are. You know what lack of ethics are too. It all boils down. We had codes of conduct for our employees. Never had any real serious ethic problems. One of the great challenges we had was early on when we, in the convenience stores, girly magazines. Should we sell girly magazines? our supplier of magazines. Magazine sales are a big business in a convenience store. He said, you gotta have these girly magazines out in front if you want our magazine rack. And gosh, we decided no, we weren't gonna do that. And it was just part of our ethics, and it worked out well. It worked out very well. I think our customer base was such that, but the problem was we had to find another source of magazines because that supplier had all the good, well-selling magazines, also with the girly magazines. Ultimately, there were some girly magazines in the store, but they were under wraps and behind the counter, but they weren't out there in front of everybody where the kids could get to them. Anything else, anything on ethics you guys want to ask me about? I'm going to take a couple minutes and just ask you to focus on this in your career. Just for talking purposes and thinking purposes, how are you going to be successful at every point in your career? 25% is just showing up. Don't lose the game by default. Showing up includes being there mentally and physically, appearance, and a lot more. And some people will say just showing up is 80% of success. But that doesn't give credence to all the other things about knowing what it is that you got to do, becoming an expert in what you want to do, and then doing what is right for the other people, your peers, your employees, your customers, your community, and attitude. So important. If you project a positive attitude, it means a lot. And you can add a lot of other things in there, but that'll help. I got a couple other things I'm going to leave with you. My son graduated from Tulane about 8 years ago, and he nearly flunked out of engineering. I went up, he was majoring in Bourbon Street. And I flew over there realizing things weren't quite right. And he said, Dad, I can't do this engineering. And I said, well, you could if you spent more time studying instead of Bourbon Street. He said, yeah, you're right, but where I am right now, I want to go into business. So we got him into the business school. He graduated in the dean's list from business school in his 4 years, so he got with the program. When he graduated, I gave him a handwritten piece that my secretary once typed up. Says, "Success, your father's advice." This is what I gave him, and I sat down and talked with him about it. And it starts out with measure your success wisely. Not everybody needs to be at the top of the organization. You can even if you want to be a leader, you don't have to be necessarily a leader by title in an organization. You can be a leader of your work group. You could apply your leadership skills outside at your church or in the community. And if you don't want the responsibility and the stress of everything that goes along with being at the top of a for-profit corporation. But anyway, can I leave these? I offer that as my advice to you all as to how to be successful. Interesting thing is, he's now 8 years with his second company. He's manager, it's a large utility, he's manager of their manpower planning, and he's feeding. I asked him, what do you think it takes to be successful? he's feeding me all that stuff back. So, you know, that's at least one guy that's found that useful. Okay, and then I said, well, what are they doing for you to help in your leadership? And I'm getting
There's a clock.
nearly out of time. And he said, well, they've identified me as one of their 200 potential future leaders. I said, well, how are they helping you to develop? He said, I get rated every year at least, and then get a discussion with my supervisor on leadership. And I said, you know, how do they rate you? Well, here is the criteria that they're rating this guy and people with less service. So this is things you can keep in mind if you want the organization you're going to work for to think of you as a leader, or if you want to develop your leadership skills. Strategist, understanding and the strategy of the organization, helping support or improve that vision or that strategy. Talent management. How good are you managing the talent that reports to you? Relationship management. Are you developing not only relationships with your boss, but the people that work for you, but what about your peers in the organization? Self-management. What are you doing to increase your learning? You get out of this institution here, guys and gals, all we've done for you at this point is help you learn how to learn. And there's a lot of learning out there every day, and look for the opportunities to go to additional seminars, take on additional responsibilities. Just don't shirk the opportunities to keep learning. This guy, my son, finally got himself back into a graduate school, and he's in a graduate program, University of Colorado now, part-time, but he's doing it one long weekend with his group every quarter, and the rest of it, his groups are working online. He's going to get a master's in global energy management. Sounds like a good program to me. And then operations management, this business about every job you're in, become an expert in that job. Seriously, don't worry about people sticking in that job and leaving you there forever. But if you're going to get additional responsibility, you've got to demonstrate that you can really handle the job and positively improve what the organization is doing. You've got to you've got to become an expert. If you become an expert in one area, people are going to say, "Hey, that gal is doing a great job. We're going to consider her for the next promotional assignment or rotational assignment." There's a lot to be learned by being flexible in terms of being able to rotate into another job. Anyway, these are the things that this particular company that my son works for measures their young people on and future leaders on. For guys, I got 10 seconds left.
Is there an email we can reach you at?
Roger at rdhfo.com. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for
Students at TLU engage in high-impact educational experiences that include civic engagement, aesthetic expression, critical thinking, and a focus on intercultural knowledge in a community that welcomes the interplay of faith and reason.